What does depression, heroin, and Facebook have in common? Stay tuned to find out. Hello and welcome to Escape the J-Curve. This is episode 18 and I am your host Rohan Nag, and probably today is the most important episode I have done till date. To make you fully understand what I'm talking about, I need to take you to my past about 4 or 5 years when I started my SEO consulting business. I've talked about it in the episodes previously, but I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. When I started my SEO consulting business, I thought that this is going to be my track to success. I had put everything in place, whatever I knew, and I had a plan in place that I started the business. I'm going to do this, and this, and this is how I'm going to make my money. I had everything planned out to the T. But the problem was, I did not have any motivation or any energy to work on my business. And I was dumbfounded. I did not feel like working on my business at all. It was very, very strange. The feeling was really weird. I logically knew that if this business worked, I could be, having so many things like popularity, like money, like success. I could be, free from the 9-to-5 struggle. I could move to any country in the world, work remotely. I could have all the freedom in the world. I could buy beautiful things for my parents. All of this made sense at an emotional or a logical level, but I was so drained of energy that I could not put in the work to make this business happen. And that played a huge, I was down. I wanted to figure out why this is happening. I knew what was good for me, but I just couldn't get the motivation to get it done. And I did a lot of research on why this is happening. And I spent months, if not years, figuring out how to fix those problems. And I came across a lot of things that kills your motivation, like, bad diet or lack of sleep or stress or your self-image, your past trauma and things like that. But there was one thing that I found pretty recently actually, and that completely shocked me and blew my mind. And that thing was dopamine. I didn't understand it well at the time, but now I do, and I'm going to try to explain what it is and how it's essential for your success journey. So what is dopamine? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and dopamine is released in our brains when we do some sort of a survival or replication activities. For example, if we eat food, our brain releases dopamine so that we keep eating food when we are hungry again and again so that we survive. That's how the brain works. To understand the importance of dopamine, we must look at a study done by a Swiss neurologist called Christian Lusser in 2016. What he did was he implanted electrodes in rats' brains, electrodes that would stimulate the reward circuitry of the mice's brain. And what they did was they fit certain levers in the cages of those mice, and the mice could press the levers on the cages anytime they wanted. And what happened when they pressed the levers was they received a dopamine hit, or their brain's reward circuitry was triggered. A very interesting thing happened after that. The mice started to push the lever again and again and again and again. They would not eat for hours, they would not sleep, they would not take any water, and they would keep pressing the lever until they dropped down out of exhaustion. And a more interesting thing happened when they removed the electrodes from their brains. The mice would all be as good as dead. They did not have any motivation. They did not have any energy left to do the basic tasks like eat food. This is crazy, isn't it? That's how somebody's brain looks like when they're addicted to dopamine. Now, why is it so important to humans? Because in modern society, we have activity after activity after activity which stimulates the brain's dopamine circuitry. It has been seen that watching pornography increases dopamine levels in your brain by 200%. Social media, Instagram, Facebook, browsing the internet, dopamine spikes. Watching pornography or masturbating, dopamine spikes. Spending hours on Netflix, browsing through all the series that there are, dopamine spikes. Alcohol, nicotine, they all impact the brain's dopamine circuits, and people feel pleasure when they do the activities that are bad for them. When they take another drag of their cigarettes, when they drink another glass of alcohol, this is almost the same as an heroin addiction. All these activities produce a higher level of dopamine in your brain. But there are some activities which produce incredibly high amounts of dopamine and are very difficult to not get addicted to. For example, activities that give you different level of expectations. For example, gambling, you win sometimes but you lose most of the times. Those activities produce the largest amount of dopamine spikes in your brain. If you cannot predict what the outcome of a scenario is, there is a greater dopamine release. And did you know this? Instagram has designed their feed in such a way that it gives you a very different experience each time you log in. So what Instagram does is, it doesn't show you all the likes or comments that you have logged in each time you log in. What it does, it shows you sometimes and doesn't show you other times. Sometimes it just sums up all your likes and comments and maybe will show it to you only the third time you log in. This is incredible. Your brain's addiction circuits are being used to get you addicted to social media or to apps like Instagram. But probably the most insidious thing that I see people being addicted to is their mobile phones these days. I mean, when the COVID pandemic was not so big and you went out, all you would see are zombies, people walking without knowing where they're going. They would be just looking at their phones, maybe looking at their WhatsApp updates, maybe looking at their Candy Crush notifications. No idea where they're going, no looking at the traffic signals, no idea if they are going to run into somebody else. All their attention and focus is going to their mobile phones. It's like they're looking at their babies. It's like newborn mothers looking at their babies. That's how important their mobile phones are to them. It's incredible. And so to sum it up, dopamine creates a neural pathway in your brain to do the activities that produce dopamine in the first place. So for example, if you think you like video games and you play video games and you beat a level, your brain actually rewires towards playing video games to get this dopamine hit again and again and again. You beat the next level, you beat the next level, you beat the next level until you finally beat the game. And the miracles of modern technology, the internet, social media, video games, immersive augmented reality or virtual reality, it has helped us immensely. It has improved our lives in a lot many ways, but it's also made us addicted to these things. And what happens in modern society, we are so stimulated, the dopamine levels in our brains are so high that it's incredibly difficult to be motivated to do tasks that you think will improve your lives. It's almost impossible to read a book. It's almost impossible to learn a new skill. It's almost impossible to start the new business. It's almost impossible to learn music because we are getting rewarded for the activities which are not very important or will not produce big incremental successes in our lives. If we juxtapose that with how we lived 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we actually had to do something really, really, really big. We had to solve a difficult problem to get the same amount of dopamine hit that we are receiving on a daily basis through Netflix, video games, Facebook, Instagram, news, pornography, high sugar processed foods, alcohol, cigarettes. It's so easy to get your dopamine hits without actually doing something hard. And it's really difficult for people who call themselves models, who are on Instagram. They just post selfies, and a lot of people like those selfies and they get a dopamine hit. They feel good about themselves. Oh, I must be a really popular person. I must be helping society. I must be building something good because so many people are liking my posts on Instagram. If you are so happy and confident and your dopamine circuits tell you that you are doing something important, how can you do tasks like reading a book? Because the dopamine releases are not that high when you read a book, or when you go to the gym, or when you go for a run, or when you start a new business, or when you learn how to code. The brain doesn't want to do it. The brain is rewired to do the tasks that produce dopamine again and again and again and again. Just like this never-ending cycles in the series Dark. I know I talk a lot about Dark. I just finished watching it and it's really, really good series and I loved it. And there are so many things that tie up with real world things that I keep bringing it up. Okay, so that's what dopamine addiction does to you. Any form of addiction. Now, in episode 16, I talked about the importance of self-image, how you see yourself and how it's directly correlated with your success. Yesterday, I talked about setting clear goals. Today, I talk about probably the most important piece of the puzzle, dopamine, and how it can make you really dull and lethargic and not focus on your dreams or make you not work on big, hard things. So, how to get out of dopamine addiction? There is only one way to do it, and it's called dopamine detox. And I have an entire chapter dedicated to my new book on dopamine detox. I laid all out. What is dopamine? What causes a dopamine rise in your brain? And how can you slowly go off the extraordinarily high amounts of dopamine in our brain so that we can focus on doing tough but important tasks which will help us in the long run. The book's ready to come out. Probably by the end of next week, I'll release it to the public and you can read all about it. But till you read my book, my call to action to you is of all these things that produce dopamine in our brains but does not help you move towards your goals, I want you to write one such activity. For example, you watch Netflix 2 hours a day. Write it down and write what you are going to exchange it with. Or maybe you want to cut that activity down. So maybe you watch 3 hours of Netflix each day and spend 2 hours on Instagram. So make a promise to yourself that you're only going to look at Instagram 15 minutes today and maybe no Netflix. That's step one on how you can break the unnecessarily high amounts of dopamine released in your brain. Once it's normalized, you can find tough activities pleasurable again. You can start reading books, you can start meditating, you can do things that will help you in the long run. Please think about it, please do it, it's very important. And thank you so much for listening in to today's episode. Bye-bye. Listen, thanks so much for listening to the episode. I really appreciate it. Now, if you think you have got any value out of this episode, please make sure to engage with the content. My podcast is available on all of the platforms like Spotify, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and it's also even available on YouTube. So if you got some value out of this content, please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment, or please download and share it with someone who would get value out of this. That's all I ask. Thank you so much.